everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about the rhetorical situation. Now, specifically, I'm going to talk to you about the rhetorical situation according to the St. Martin's Guide to Writing. That is just because there are tons of different ways to talk about the rhetorical situation. A lot of places talk about the rhetorical triangle. There's also soapstone, and with this book, I'm going to talk about the question words / what I call go camp. So when we're talking about the rhetorical situation, we want to think a lot about why we are writing in a certain way. So one, this affects us as a writer, and it also affects us as a reader. So as a writer, it helps us think about what should we do to be most impactful in our writing. And as a reader, we think about, what do I expect from this piece of writing based on all of these elements, okay? So the first thing we're going to talk about is genre. Genre in general just refers to a category of things. So if we're talking about music, we might talk about country, rock, hip hop, rap. If we're talking about movies, we might talk about rom-coms or comedy in general. We might talk about horror films, we might talk about action films. So when we're talking about these things, we start to realize that when we say something is an action film or a country song, we have a preset idea in our head of what that's going to be like. And the same thing happens with writing. So in writing, we have tons of different genres that all have their own expectations. And as a writer, you want to know the expectations beforehand so that you can fit into those expectations and maybe purposefully subvert them. And as a reader, you tend to know what you're expecting out of a piece of writing. So for a tweet, for example, you're expecting 280 words, and sometimes if you have like the 1/ question mark or 1/41, whatever it is, you know that this is a long series of tweets. But beyond that, you have your 280 characters. You expect that it's probably going to have a hashtag. It might have an @ in it, a shout out to somebody. You might have improper grammar. Say that in quotes, we'll talk about it later. So something that's more text and internet speak versus proper standard American English. And it's probably going to be a trending topic or recent event or something interesting that everybody's talking about. If you're just talking about something that nobody cares about, you're probably not going to do it on Twitter. Although lots of people still do, it doesn't stop them. Okay, so that is our tweet. Now we're going to think about an academic essay. How is an academic essay different from a tweet? So many ways. So you have your language, first of all, that is completely different. That text to internet speak is not going to work. You're going to have to use standard American English. You're going to have standard grammar and punctuation and all these things. Instead of hashtags or @, you're going to have citations. It is going to be long, definitely not only in 208 characters. It's going to be in paragraphs, lots of things like this. So even just by looking at the two side by side, you know that they're different. The last one I want to bring up is a resume. A resume is going to look completely different from all the other examples. So a resume, even at like 10 feet away, you probably still know it's a resume. It has lots of white space on the page. There are bolded sections and stuff on one side of the page and on the other side of the page. And you also have an idea of what goes on there. You should have your education, your work history, your contact information, what you did in those previous jobs, and it should be bullet pointed and not full sentences. All right, so we're getting an idea of this is what genre means, that when we talk about a genre, we have expectations for that genre. As a reader and as a writer, we can kind of slide into those and feel how comfy and warm it is because you have those restrictions that kind of hug you like a blanket. Okay, so the next thing we're going to talk about is occasion. So occasion and context, which is our next one, kind of fit together very well in that they talk about the where and the when something happens. Now, occasion refers to the when something is happening. Kind of like a wedding occasion is at a specific moment in time. So occasion you want to be thinking about, is something timely and relevant? And if not, it doesn't have the same impact. So if you're thinking about maybe some trending hashtags, it wouldn't be the same to tag something that happened 5 years ago versus today. We probably won't see people doing the ice bucket challenge. And if they do, we're probably gonna go, that was kind of 2014, huh? Like, I guess we can keep doing that, but it's not gonna spread wild or anything. So we're kind of thinking about the things that are happening right now and how can they be most effective? When is the most effective time to discuss something, to publish something, etc. The next thing that fits into that is the context. So itch moment there. Context refers to where. So we're thinking about a social context, a cultural context. So for one thing, if we're thinking about publishing something in the United States, first of all, it is going to be probably in English. Obviously, if you are speaking to a specific demographic, it might be in a different language. It might be in Spanish. In this region of America, it might be in Arabic. It might be in Portuguese, considering like certain Boston suburbs, etc. You understand. So one, if you're thinking about where something is being published, you're going to think about the language, but beyond that, you might think about what are the cultures and beliefs of that area. Is it a very conservative area? Is it a very liberal area? Do people feel one way about something or another way about something? Because if you know the culture and the beliefs, you're going to be able to talk about a subject differently and think about it differently than if you were writing for somebody somewhere else. Okay, so that's the where and when something is happening. The next thing we are going to think about, which is super important and will fit into basically any rhetorical model that you look at, is the audience. So the audience is basically who you are writing for. And a lot of times you think about your ideal audience. So who, if you could think of any group of people or even one specific person, who would you be writing for? So when we're thinking about audience, we can start very wide and think, what language am I writing in? So speakers of what language am I thinking about? So if I say I'm writing in English, that cuts out a whole huge population of people who don't speak English. The next thing is age. Am I writing for 5-year-olds or am I writing for 80-year-olds? Am I writing for 18-year-olds? Depending on who I'm writing to, I'm going to write it very differently. If I'm writing towards 5-year-olds, it's going to be very short. I'm going to use simple words. There's going to be a lot of pictures, which is going to be different than if I'm writing to an 18 or 30 or 40-year-old. Another thing we want to think about with our audience is what are their beliefs? What are their values? So even if I were writing about the same topic, how might I address somebody who is pro-choice versus someone who is pro-life? If I'm talking about abortion, even if it's the same topic, if I'm talking about the New York law on abortion, if I'm writing to a pro-life audience, I'm going to write very differently than if I write to a pro-choice audience. So as we're thinking about audience, who are we writing for? What do they believe? And also, what do they already know? So one way I like to think about this is that we all have something that we know a lot about that other people probably don't know a lot about. So I know a lot about writing. I know a lot about gymnastics. I was a gymnast for 14 years. So if I am talking about gymnastics, I'm going to talk very differently if I am talking to a teammate, a friend who is not into gymnastics, and a random person. So my teammate, I'm going to use all the jargon. I'm going to call something a souk. I'm going to explain like I did my kip cast handstand, blah, blah, blah. Okay, and they are going to go, Whereas if I'm talking to a lay person or a friend, I'm probably going to explain it a little differently. I might use more hand motions to explain exactly what's happening and try to explain like what is happening with the body when this happens. Now, all of you already know about audience because I'm sure you talk to me differently than you talk to your friends, than you talk differently to your parents or your grandparents. We all already understand that our language and use of language and even what we talk about changes depending on who we're talking to. Okay, So that is our audience, very important to think about. The next one is our medium. Okay, so medium is just the singular version of media, and we know what that means. It's just kind of how something is happening. So if you are turning in a paper on paper, for example, it might be different than if you're turning it in digitally. Because if you're turning something in on paper, like this, you do not have any links in here. I cannot click any time I push something, it's not going to work. Whereas if I have an online paper, and through our class, I'm going to have links that say, hey, for more information, go here. And I don't have to do all that explaining. I don't have to try to take somebody's information and cite it all over the place. I can just say, hey, go look at their website. Okay, so there's how like a piece of paper versus something online can differ. And it also makes us think about what our expectations are of a genre. So if we are reading an online article, we expect it to have links that go out somewhere else, that we can look at who the author is, that we can see maybe more things related to that topic. We can see other articles that are similar. Whereas if we're reading something in the newspaper, we don't expect that. We're like, no, why would I expect something like that to happen? We might also think about, like, do we expect there to be videos or photos, depending on the genre and the medium and how these things are working together. So how something is produced, how it's published, is going to change, again, how you write it and how your audience expects it to be. The very last thing is purpose. So our purpose is our goal, and that is exactly what it sounds like. It's what we want the reader to think, believe, or feel after they have read our piece. Now, some of the most common purposes are to inform, persuade, and entertain. And there are a million other things that we could want to do with our writing, but those three kind of hit the top. So when we're writing something, do we just want to tell someone about a situation? Do I want to say, like, this is the St. Martin's Guide to Writing. It has blue on the cover, and then different colored triangles in different geometric shapes. Or do I try to say, hey, this is the St. Martin's Guide to Writing. It is the best guide to first-year writing that I have ever used. You should definitely buy one for yourself. Okay, so the first is obviously just informing. It's very non-biased, I could say. It's a neutral. Whereas the second one is trying to persuade you. And I could say lots of things to say why this is a better book for writing than other books. But that is a general idea to persuasion. The last thing could be if you are just trying to entertain somebody, and this is a book my father gave me. It's a journal with lots of things. It's meant to be entertaining and maybe to make me think about myself. I don't know. Also made me feel a little weird that he gave me a book, a journal called Dear Weird. Okay, so those are our various rhetorical situation elements. Our G for genre, O for occasion, C for context, A for audience, M for medium, and P for purpose. And we also might want to think about these as we're filling out our question words: who, what, where, when, why, and how. So feel free to look through any more materials, can read up in your book, or go over to the writing styles tips page, etc. And I'll talk to you more about it there. Okay, bye.